Enhancing colors by altering saturation. Saturation is the purity of a particular color. The higher the saturation level indicates that the color is more intense. The lower the saturation means the color is more grayed out. It's less intense. So there are two methods that are commonly used in Photoshop for modifying color saturation. Those are hue and saturation adjustment and the sponge tool. Let's start with the sponge tool. So the sponge tool is located over here in the tool panel, and it's hiding underneath the dodge and the burn. So we see the sponge tool. The quick key is the letter O on your keyboard. And this tool has two uses. We can go either way. We can either increase or we can decrease the color saturation of a particular area within a layer. So up in the options bar here, we have two different modes. We can either desaturate or we can saturate. And remember, desaturate decreases, pulls out the color. Saturate makes it more intense. We also have brush size here, and we can navigate to our brush panel. We can choose our brush size. We also can just use the square bracket key on our keyboard as we're working with the sponge tool. We have flow here as well, and that's how quickly the color is adjusted, and that rate is measured in a percentage. So when I go out here into my document, you can see I have my cursor set to show the size of the brush. If I use my square bracket, I can increase or I can decrease. You notice that my brush size up here in options bar did change as I did that. So one thing to remember here is the sponge is destructive. What does that mean? That means that I will be destroying pixels. I will change my pixels permanently. So when I'm desaturating here, I'm at a flow of 50%, so it's not going to happen very quickly. And what a lot of times people will do is they'll sit and they'll drag and they'll drag and they'll drag, and they'll say nothing's happening. And then all of a sudden Photoshop catches up, and you can see what really did happen. So as I click and drag here, you'll start to see that my color, there it goes, is disappearing. It almost looks as though this part is burnt at the moment, but what I'm doing is I'm taking out the color. And if I do this over and over and over and over and over and over, eventually you're going to take all the color out and you're going to end up with grayscale. And then eventually, if you go to the extreme, you will end up with just black and white pixels. So it will take everything out of those pixels. Little bits is what you want to use with this. Now if I turn this over to the saturate, let's increase the flow here so that we see a result pretty quickly. And so what I'm going to do is click in an area here. I'll choose the little top corner here with the leaves. And if I click, look at how quickly my color is completely emphasized up here. Okay, so I am oversaturating. I'm adding more to the point, again, you can go to the extreme where if I click and drag over an area forever, it's going to take one of those pixel colors and it's going to take that to dominate, and that's the only one pixel color we're going to see. So the sponge tool gives us the ability to either saturate or desaturate, but know that this is destructive. Hue and saturation adjustment. This is the second method that we can use to adjust our saturation. To define hue, hue is the amount of color that's either reflected from or transmitted through an object. Hue is the name of a color. Hue is assigned a measurement between 0 and 360 degrees, and it really is based off of our traditional color wheel. So we can adjust the hue and saturation. It's very similar to adjusting the color balance. Let's go ahead and do that. First of all, I can go under Image Menu and to Adjustments and Hue and Saturation. Now remember, if I choose to use this method, this is destructive, meaning I will be destroying the pixels. The rule of thumb is to not be destructive. Try to preserve those original pixels as best you can. So that means I'm not going to choose this method. I'm going to cancel that, and instead I can either navigate to my adjustment panel and look for hue and saturation, or I can use the drop down little icon at the bottom here that is my create new adjustment layer. So remember that we have 3 rows here. The second row, first one, is the create new hue saturation adjustment layer. So here it is. So in this case, it does look just a little bit different. We do have a colorize option here, and that allows us to colorize what we would like. And again, here's my hue. So we can go in all of these different channels. Okay, and you notice it's changing the whole image. So here's a positive 180 to a minus 180 that will equal 360. That's my color wheel. Here's saturation. This is completely intense. This is desaturated, where we're losing our color. Lightness is just the lightness value. So I'm washing it out. Overexposed versus underexposed, all the way down to lightness, turns it off. I also can turn on colorize here, and this allows me to generally colorize the whole. So rather than looking at individual pixels and doing a color adjustment based on those pixels, it's doing it as a whole. So this is where you can get some interesting sepia kind of tones and interesting effects. That's the colorize. Okay. So let's just say we go back to there and tuck that back away. I've not destroyed the pixels. I can turn this off, or I can turn this on. I want to go back up here because there's another feature in this box that allows me to choose the range that I want this to go into. I can choose reds, I can choose yellows, I can choose greens, and so on and so forth. What this gives me here, let's go back and choose the yellows. This gives me a range, a color range, or kind of the, a present color ranges at the bottom of the panel here. And I have an option to adjust this as well. So if I move this range here, what's going to happen, not much visually as you can see, it's taking me to the different areas that I want to adjust. Look at this. Watch that box there. See how as I move, it changes to the different reds. If I go even more, I enter into the blues. Over here is the greens. So if I want to adjust sort of this color, and I could narrowly select by moving my sliders here in a bit, this is the color range that I'm going to be playing with. And so if I make this extremely narrow, these are the colors that will be changed. And now if I drag my slider, whoa, look at that. Okay, so it limited what was being changed here because it's only my yellows. Okay, so I can make this actually lose completely. Now, if we wanted to go back to how we were when we first started, holding down your Alt or Option key changes the cancel button to a reset. So if I reset this, this is what I started with. All right, so I again have to go into a range here and limit this down. We'll drag it all the way down. That's kind of my highlights shadow area. Let's move this into, click inside here, we can move the whole range. Let's go more into my reds this time, a little bit in the yellows, and now let's change this. You can see how that all is changing. So I missed a little area there. I might need to expand this just a little bit, and look, by doing that, I'm taking care of it. There it went away. So now I made completely yellow flowers. Remember though, this is destructive. So if I keep going, I can make a complete different look. Okay, so some work needed there. But if I stick with this yellow, click OK, I've destroyed my original pixels. I've lost those original colors. So if you want to do it that method, you're going to have to make a copy of your layer, work off of a layer copy.